It started as a peaceful weekend getaway. Just me, my cabin, and the quiet sound of the mountains. But then, cars began to arrive. Not one, not two, but dozens. Before I knew it, hundreds of strangers filled my property. Laughing, drinking, treating my cabin like it was theirs. And when I asked who sent them, they all said the same name. Karen. Yes, the head of our HOA. But she didn't just cross the line this time. She crossed into something criminal. And by the end of the night, she wasn't giving orders anymore. She was in handcuffs. How did it come to this? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will shock you even more. Welcome back, everyone, to HOA Karma Stories. I'm James, a homeowner in a quiet little town here in the U.S. I've lived under HOA rules for years, and let me tell you, the drama never ends. I share these stories because they're real, they're raw, and they show just how wild HOA life can get. If you're over 50 like me, you know what I mean, so why not join me on this journey? Go ahead and subscribe. It's like joining your neighbor for coffee, except the stories are way crazier. And before we dive deeper, tell me, where are you watching from today? I'd love to know who my neighbors are out there. So, like I was saying, it all started as a quiet weekend in my little mountain cabin. I had been looking forward to it for weeks. The city was getting louder, busier, and honestly, my HOA had been on my nerves more than ever. Karen, the HOA president, had a way of making every small rule feel like it was the law of the land. She would drive around the neighborhood, clipboard in hand, pointing out trash cans left out too long, grass that wasn't short enough, even the color of a neighbor's shutters. And somehow, she always found something wrong with me. So when I finally packed my truck and drove up to the cabin, I thought, this is it. This is where I'll get some peace. Just me, the trees, the sound of birds, and maybe a good book by the fire. No HOA rules, no Karen, just silence. At first, it was perfect. The cabin smelled of fresh pine, the air was crisp and cool, and I sat out on the porch with a cup of coffee, looking at the mountains. I thought, this is exactly what I needed. I even told myself I might extend my stay. But peace never lasts long when Karen is involved. On Saturday morning, I woke up to the sound of tires on gravel. Now, my cabin is off a dirt road, not exactly a place where people just pass by. So when I heard the crunch of tires, I got curious. I stepped outside, looked down the road, and saw a small sedan pulling up. It didn't look too strange, maybe someone lost? But before I could even wave, another car came. Then another. And another. By the time the fifth car pulled up, I thought, something's not right here. I walked down toward the drive, and people started getting out of their cars. Coolers in their hands, fold-out chairs, even big speakers. It looked like they were setting up for a party. Hey! I called out. Can I help you? One man looked at me, smiled, and said, we're here for the cabin party. I froze. What party? I asked. He shrugged. Karen told us it was open for everyone. Said it's a community gathering. I swear, my jaw almost hit the ground. Karen? How on earth did she even know about my cabin, let alone think she could send people here? But before I could even argue, more cars rolled up. SUVs, trucks, minivans. Within an hour, my peaceful mountain getaway turned into a parking lot. By noon, I counted almost 300 strangers all over my property. Kids running through the grass, teenagers blasting music, adults setting up food tables like it was a festival. It was chaos. And the craziest part? Every time I asked someone who sent them, they all gave the same answer. Karen. I walked back toward the porch, trying to calm myself. My hands were shaking with anger. This was my cabin, my private property, and she had just turned it into her playground. I spotted her, too. Karen. Standing near the steps of my porch like she owned the place. She was in her usual bright red jacket, sunglasses on, waving at people like she was hosting the event. She smiled at me, and with that smug voice, she said, "Isn't this great? Look at all the community spirit." I couldn't believe it. She had crossed lines before, but this? This was something else. She hadn't just bent a rule, she had broken into my life. My private space. People were everywhere now. In my kitchen grabbing drinks from the fridge, sitting on my porch like it was a public park, some even trying to walk into bedrooms. I shouted, "Hey! This isn't your house. You can't be in there." But they just laughed, like it was all part of the fun. The noise was deafening. Music blasting, people shouting, kids screaming. And in the middle of it all, Karen, smiling, acting like queen of the mountain. I tried to talk to her again. "Karen, this has to stop. These people can't be here. This is my cabin. You don't have permission." She just looked at me and said, "You're overreacting. This is for everyone's good. It's called community bonding. You should be thanking me." Thanking her? For 300 strangers tearing through my property? For the trash already piling up in the yard? For the piece I had driven hours to find, completely destroyed? I could feel my blood boiling. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw everyone out. But there were too many of them. 300 people against one man? It felt impossible. And that's when I realized I had to make a choice. Either let Karen win again, or take action. I walked back into the cabin, closed the door behind me, and grabbed my phone. My hands were shaking as I dialed 911. The operator answered, "What's your emergency?" And I said, "I need the police at my cabin. Right now. 300 strangers are trespassing on my property, and the person responsible is my HOA president." The operator's pause told me everything. Even she couldn't believe what I had just said. But she dispatched officers, and within minutes, I could already hear the distant sirens echoing through the mountains. The party outside didn't stop. People were still laughing, still drinking, still shouting. But soon, the flashing red and blue lights would change everything. And as I stood at the window, watching the chaos unfold, I asked myself one question. What kind of person, what kind of neighbor, thinks it's okay to send 300 strangers to someone's private cabin? Backhand index pointing right, and here's where you end part 1 with audience engagement. So tell me, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done the moment those cars started showing up? Would you confront everyone head-on, or call the cops like I did? Let me know in the comments below. The sirens grew louder, echoing through the trees, bouncing off the mountain walls like a warning bell. At first, nobody seemed to notice. The music was too loud, the laughter too heavy. People were dancing in the yard, drinking from red cups, shouting to each other like they were at some festival. But then, the flashing lights appeared down the dirt road. Red, blue, slicing through the night like fire. That's when everything froze. The music cut off, the laughter died down, and people turned toward the road. 3 police SUVs rolled up, tires crunching the gravel, stopping right in front of my cabin. Doors opened, and out stepped uniformed officers, hands resting on their belts, scanning the scene. I stepped out onto the porch, my heart pounding in my chest. Finally someone was here to put an end to this madness. But Karen didn't look scared. No. She stood taller, like she was proud of what she had done. She raised her voice, waved her hands, and shouted, "It's fine, officers. Everything here is under control. This is a community event." The gall of her. Talking like she was in charge. Like she owned my property. One officer walked straight toward me. "Sir, are you the property owner?" I nodded. "Yes, this is my cabin. And none of these people were invited. They're trespassing." The officer turned, scanning the crowd. I could see the confusion in people's faces. Some whispered, some pulled out their phones, some started to back away like they were ready to bolt. But Karen wasn't backing down. "Don't listen to him," she said. "This cabin belongs to the community. He's just being selfish. We're all supposed to share. I couldn't believe my ears. Share? Share my cabin? Was she serious? The officer raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, this isn't your property, is it? Karen crossed her arms, lips pursed tight. Well, technically, no, but as the HOA president, I have the authority to use it for community events. It's for the greater good. I stepped forward, anger boiling. Authority? This isn't even in the HOA. This is MY private cabin, paid for with MY money. You don't have any right to invite anyone here. For the first time, I saw the officer's expression harden. He turned back to Karen. Ma'am, you're trespassing, and so is everyone else you invited. You need to shut this down. Right now. But Karen, she laughed. That's right, she actually laughed in his face. She said, you can't arrest me for this. These people came because I invited them. You should be thanking me. I created a safe, fun event for everyone. The officer's patience snapped. Ma'am, this is criminal trespassing, destruction of private property, and unlawful gathering. If you don't cooperate, we will have to take you into custody. Her smile vanished. Her sunglasses came off. And suddenly, the smug queen of the HOA looked nervous. But before she could argue again, the crowd started shifting. People didn't want to be around for what was about to happen. Some ran to their cars, engines starting, headlights flashing as they tried to get out. Others stood frozen, phones out, recording every second. Karen shouted after them. Don't leave. He can't make you go. This is our party. But nobody listened anymore. Because the officers were already stepping closer. One pulled out his handcuffs. The sound of metal clicking open echoed through the yard. Karen took a step back, eyes darting around like she was searching for support. But her guests, the strangers she brought here, weren't on her side. Not anymore. And then it happened. The officer grabbed her by the arm, turned her around, and with one swift move, snapped the cuffs onto her wrists. She gasped, her face red with shock. This is harassment. This is abuse of power. I'll sue every single one of you. But the officers didn't flinch. They walked her toward the SUVs as the crowd whispered and filmed. Karen, the all-powerful HOA president, was no longer in control. She was just another person being arrested. I stood on the porch, watching it all. And I can't lie. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. For once, she wasn't the one giving orders. For once, she was the one facing consequences. But my relief didn't last long. Because even as the officers led her away, I saw the mess left behind. Trash everywhere, broken bottles on the porch, muddy footprints across my floors. My cabin, my safe place, looked like it had survived a storm. And the thought hit me hard. What would happen next? Would Karen actually face justice, or would she twist this around, like she always did, and somehow blame me? Would the HOA rally behind her? Would this nightmare actually be over, or was it just beginning? I stood there in the silence that followed, the flashing lights fading as the SUVs drove away with Karen in the back seat. The mountain air felt colder now. The quiet wasn't peaceful anymore, it was heavy. And deep down, I knew, this wasn't the end. Because with Karen, nothing is ever simple. So let me ask you, if your HOA president was caught red-handed like this, do you think the community would finally turn against them, or would they find a way to keep supporting her? The night after Karen's arrest should have felt like victory. But instead, it felt heavy, almost too quiet. I walked back inside the cabin, closing the door behind me, and looked around. Everywhere I turned, I saw the damage left behind. Empty cups stacked on the counters, food spilled across the table, muddy footprints staining the wooden floors. Even the smell, it was sour, a mix of alcohol, smoke, and sweat. I picked up a chair that had been knocked over, straightened it, and sighed. This wasn't the weekend I planned. This wasn't the peace I came for. I didn't even know where to start cleaning. So I just stood there in silence, staring at the mess, until a thought crept into my mind. Karen. What would happen to her now? The police had taken her away, but I knew her well enough to know she wouldn't give up. Karen wasn't the type to admit she was wrong. She wasn't the type to accept punishment. She was the type to fight back, even if it meant twisting the truth. And as much as I hated to admit it, I knew this wasn't over. I tried to sleep that night, but every little sound made me jump. A branch tapping against the window, the wind howling through the trees, even the creak of the old cabin walls. My mind kept replaying the image of Karen being led away in handcuffs. And instead of feeling safe, I felt unsettled. Because deep down, I knew she would come for me. The next morning, I drove back into town. I stopped at the diner, a little place where the locals gathered for coffee and gossip. And sure enough, people were already talking. Did you hear about the HOA president? One woman whispered to her friend. Got arrested up at the cabin, can you believe it? Another man chimed in, that woman's been on a power trip for years. It was only a matter of time. I sat there, sipping my coffee, listening. Part of me felt relief. Finally, other people were seeing what I had dealt with for so long. Finally, they were realizing that Karen wasn't some hero of the community, she was a bully. But then, the door opened. And in walked a group of HOA board members. They weren't smiling. They weren't laughing. They looked serious. One of them spotted me, leaned toward the others, and whispered something. Then they all turned and stared at me. Their eyes weren't kind. They weren't curious. They were cold. That's when I realized. Karen may have been the one in handcuffs, but she still had influence. She still had people on her side. I finished my coffee quickly and left, but the feeling stayed with me all day. The looks, the whispers, the weight of being the one who stood up to her. It wasn't victory. It was tension. And it was building. When I got back to the cabin, I found something waiting for me. A note. It was taped to the door, written in sharp, messy letters. It said, "You made a mistake. This isn't over." No name. No signature. But I didn't need one. I knew exactly who it was from, or at least, who it was about. My chest tightened as I held the note in my hand. Karen was in jail, sure. But she had friends. She had allies. And clearly, they weren't done with me. The next few days were a blur of cleaning and repairing. I patched up the floors, scrubbed out the stains, picked up every bit of trash I could find. But no matter how much I cleaned, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I stepped outside, I felt eyes on me. Every time I drove down the road, I saw cars slow down, drivers staring a little too long. It was like the whole community was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. And then, the phone rang. It was the police. They wanted me to come down to the station and give a statement. I agreed, of course. But when I arrived, I saw something that nearly stopped me in my tracks. Karen. She was there. Sitting in a chair, talking to an officer, her hands no longer cuffed. She looked tired, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. When she saw me, she smirked. That same smug smirk I had seen 100 times before. The officer explained that she had posted bail. She was free, at least for now, until her court date. But she wasn't backing down. She was already telling them her side of the story. That it was all a misunderstanding. That she was trying to build community. That I had overreacted and called the cops when I didn't need to. I wanted to shout, to argue, to tell them the truth. But I knew one thing. Karen was dangerous with her words. She could spin a story better than anyone. And if I wasn't careful, she'd turn the whole thing around on me. That night, back at the cabin, I couldn't sleep again. Every sound felt louder. Every shadow looked darker. And the note on my door replayed in my head. This isn't over. I sat by the window, staring out into the darkness, and thought to myself, was I really safe now? Or had I just started a battle I couldn't win? What do you think, friends, if someone like Karen posted bail and came back into your neighborhood after pulling something like this? Would you feel safe? Or would you be looking over your shoulder every single day? Tell me in the comments. The morning after seeing Karen at the police station, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. The cabin was clean now, but the air still felt heavy, like the mess she left behind wasn't just trash, it was a storm cloud hanging over me. I drove back into town for groceries, trying to distract myself. But the moment I walked through the store doors, I felt it, the stares. People stopped mid-conversation, some whispering behind their hands, others shaking their heads. I wasn't just another neighbor anymore. I was the man who had HOA Karen arrested. At first, I thought maybe people would cheer me on. After all, they'd suffered under her too. But instead, I saw doubt in their eyes. Like they were wondering if I had gone too far. And then I overheard it, two older men by the coffee aisle, talking low. Karen says he set her up, says he wanted her gone so he could run the HOA himself. The other man nodded. She's been telling everyone she was trying to help the community, and he twisted it. My stomach dropped. There it was. Karen's game plan. She wasn't just defending herself, she was rewriting the story. She was painting me as the villain. I rushed through the store, grabbed what I needed, and left. But when I stepped outside, a folded piece of paper was tucked under my truck's windshield wiper. I pulled it out, opened it, and read. Enjoy your little win. You won't hold this seat for long. Seat. The HOA seat. She was already framing this as some kind of political move, like I wanted power. But I didn't. I just wanted peace. I just wanted her gone. Back at the cabin, I sat on the porch, staring at the mountains, trying to calm down. But it didn't last long. Because soon, my phone buzzed. A message from one of my neighbors. Hey, just a heads up, there's going to be an HOA meeting tonight. Karen's calling it emergency business. You should probably be there. Emergency business. I could only imagine what that meant. But I knew one thing, if I didn't show up, Karen would use my silence against me. That evening, I drove to the community hall. The parking lot was full. More cars than I had ever seen at a meeting before. Word had spread, and everyone wanted to see what would happen. Inside, the room buzzed with tension. People sat in folding chairs, some leaning forward, others whispering nervously. And at the front, there she was. Karen. No handcuffs now. Just her red jacket, her smug smile, and a microphone in her hand. She started speaking before I even sat down. Neighbors, friends. I want to thank you for coming. I know there's been a lot of confusion after what happened this weekend. And I think it's time the truth is told. She looked straight at me as she said that word, truth. Then she launched into her story. She said she had organized the cabin gathering as a community retreat. She said I had agreed to it weeks ago but then changed my mind at the last second. She said I called the police not because she did anything wrong, but because I wanted to embarrass her and take her place as HOA president. I sat there, stunned. Every word out of her mouth was a lie. But the way she told it, confident, smooth, full of fake concern for the community spirit, it was convincing. I could see heads nodding in the audience. People were buying it. Finally, I stood up. None of that is true, I said, my voice shaking but strong. I never agreed to anything. This is my private cabin, not HOA property. She sent 300 strangers there without my permission. She destroyed my peace, my home, and my trust. And when I stopped her, she got arrested because the police saw the truth. A few people clapped. But others looked unsure. Karen jumped back in. He's twisting everything. He's angry because I hold this position, and he wants it for himself. Don't let him fool you. The room erupted into arguments. Some shouted at her, others at me. It was chaos, just like the cabin all over again. Finally, one of the board members raised their hand. Enough. We'll schedule a vote. If the community thinks Karen crossed a line, we'll take action. But until then, this meeting is adjourned. A vote. That's where this was headed. Not just a fight between me and Karen anymore, but a fight for the trust of the entire community. As people filed out, I caught fragments of conversations. He's right, she went too far. No, she's been helping us for years, he's overreacting. It was split, right down the middle. I walked to my truck, feeling the weight of every stare, every whisper. And as I drove back to the cabin, one question burned in my mind. If Karen was willing to twist the truth this far, how far would she go to win that vote? What do you think, folks, if your HOA president was caught lying but still had half the community on their side, how would you convince people of the truth? Speak up or let their actions expose them? I'd love to hear your thoughts below. The night of the meeting stayed with me like a bad dream. I drove back to the cabin, headlights cutting through the dark road, replaying every word Karen said. The way she lied so smoothly, the way people nodded, some even clapped for her, it burned inside me. She wasn't just trying to save herself anymore. She was trying to bury me. When I reached the cabin, I sat in the truck for a long time before going inside. The silence felt different now. Not peaceful. Not even heavy. It felt dangerous. Like the calm before a storm. I locked the doors, checked the windows twice, and still couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Like eyes were watching from the tree line. Maybe it was paranoia, but with Karen free and a vote coming, anything felt possible. The next morning, I opened my laptop and started writing everything down. Every detail. The moment the cars arrived, the strangers setting up, the things Karen said to me, the police report. I knew I needed records. Because if Karen could twist the truth in front of the entire neighborhood, then I had to protect myself with facts. By noon, my phone buzzed. A neighbor again. Hey, you should know. Karen's been going door to door. She's telling people you called the cops because you don't like anyone having fun. She's saying you're trying to turn the neighborhood into your kingdom. My stomach dropped. Door to door. She wasn't just whispering anymore, she was campaigning. And the worst part? She was good at it. For all her arrogance, Karen knew how to smile, how to charm, how to sound like she cared. She could twist her arrest into a misunderstanding, her lies into good intentions. I had to do something. So I called a few of my closest neighbors. People who had seen her behavior over the years. The fines she handed out for grass an inch too long. The warnings for leaving Christmas lights up a week late. The way she singled people out if they didn't bend to her will. We met that evening in Tom's garage. Just 6 of us, sitting in folding chairs, sipping coffee, speaking in low voices like it was some secret club. Everyone had a story. Everyone had a scar from Karen's reign. She fined me $200 because my trash can lid was cracked, Tom said. She threatened to tow my car because I parked in front of my own house, Sarah added. She yelled at my grandson for riding his bike on the sidewalk, another neighbor said. I wrote it all down. Every story. Every detail. We weren't just neighbors anymore, we were witnesses. But even as we talked, even as I felt a flicker of hope, my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Careful. You don't know who you're dealing with. I showed it to the group. They exchanged worried looks. It didn't need a name. We all knew who it was about. That night, sleep refused to come. I sat by the window again, staring out into the woods, listening to the sounds of the night. Every crunch of leaves, every snap of a branch made my heart race. I kept thinking about that note on my door, that smirk at the station, the whispers at the store. Karen wasn't just fighting for her seat. She was fighting to crush me. Days passed, and the tension grew. The vote was set for the end of the month. Flyers appeared in mailboxes, bright paper with Karen's smiling face and the words, "Keeping our community together." She was painting herself as a hero. And me? She painted me as the man who wanted to divide everyone. One afternoon, I came home from town to find something that made my blood run cold. Spray paint across the side of my cabin. Big red letters, "Traitor." I stood there, staring at the word dripping down the wood, and my hands shook. This wasn't just politics anymore. This was war. I cleaned it off as best I could, but the mark felt burned into the cabin anyway. And into me. That evening, I gathered with my small group again. We shared our fears, our anger, our disbelief. But then Sarah leaned forward, her voice steady. She's strong because she makes people afraid. But if we tell the truth loud, clear, together, we can break that fear. Her words stuck with me. Karen had her lies. I had the truth. But the truth needed to be louder than her lies. So we made a plan. Each of us would speak to neighbors we trusted, one by one. Not shouting, not accusing, just telling the truth. What happened at the cabin? What Karen had done over the years? What kind of leader she really was? It wasn't easy. Some people slammed doors in our faces. Some said, "Karen's been good to us, I don't believe you." But others listened. Others nodded, sighed, and said, "I've had enough of her too." It wasn't everyone. But it was something. And in a fight like this, something was better than nothing. Still, as the vote grew closer, the fear never left. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, sure I heard footsteps outside. I'd see cars parked near the cabin, engines running, then driving off when I stepped out. It felt like a shadow followed me everywhere. And through it all, one question kept spinning in my mind. If the truth isn't enough to beat someone like Karen, what is? So tell me, friends, if your HOA president turned half the community against you with lies, would you fight back with truth, or would you start playing dirty just to survive? I'd love to know what you'd do. The days moved slower as the vote drew closer. But the tension in the neighborhood grew faster, heavier, almost choking. Everywhere I went, I felt it. Eyes following me, whispers cutting off the second I walked past. Some people gave me nods of support, others turned away. It was like the community was split right down the middle, and I was standing on a fault line ready to crack. Karen was louder than ever. Her flyers, her speeches, her fake charm. I saw her on porches, laughing with families, holding hands with kids, promising a stronger future. She was playing the role of savior, when in truth, she was the storm destroying everything. One evening, I came home and found another note shoved under my door. This one wasn't a threat. It was worse. People are talking. Be careful who you trust. I sat at the kitchen table staring at those words. Be careful who you trust. Did that mean someone in my little group? Had Karen gotten to them? Or was it just another mind game to make me doubt myself? I didn't know. And the not knowing, that was the worst part. The next morning, I decided to walk the neighborhood myself. No flyers, no speeches. Just me, face to face, telling my story. Some people listened quietly, eyes wide with disbelief when I described the 300 strangers storming my cabin. Others shook their heads, saying Karen told them it was all an exaggeration. She said you called the cops just because you don't like her, one man muttered. I clenched my fists, but stayed calm. Because anger wouldn't win this fight. Not against Karen. That night, Tom called me. He sounded worried. She's planning something big before the vote. I don't know what, but I heard her talking at the diner. She said she's going to show everyone your true colors. True colors. That phrase stuck in my head like poison. What did she mean? What lie was she about to spread? The answer came 2 days later. I woke up to messages blowing up my phone. Neighbors texting me, asking if it was true. I opened social media, and there it was. Karen had posted pictures of the cabin, trashed, dirty, broken. She wrote, "This is what happens when someone can't handle responsibility." He threw a tantrum, called the cops, and left the community to clean up his mess. Do you really want this man leading us? My blood went cold. She twisted it again. The mess those strangers left behind, she was blaming it on me. The comments were flooding in. Some people defended me. But others believed her. Looks like he wanted the drama. Typical, blaming Karen when he's the one who can't handle it. I slammed the laptop shut, my chest pounding. This wasn't just lies whispered at meetings anymore. This was public. This was spreading like fire. That evening, my group met again in Tom's garage. Everyone was tense, voices low, glancing at the door like they expected someone to barge in. "We need proof," Sarah said. "Pictures, videos, anything." "Didn't anyone record when the cops showed up?" I dug through my phone, scrolling through the pictures I had taken after the party. The trash, the broken bottles, the spray paint. But it wasn't enough. Karen was too good at twisting things. We needed something undeniable. Then Tom leaned forward. My nephew was at the cabin that day. He filmed the whole thing on his phone. The cars arriving, the crowd, even Karen shouting about community spirit. He still has the videos. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope. Hard, solid hope. Because if those videos showed what Tom said, then Karen's lies could finally be crushed. We made a plan. We'd show the footage at the vote. Not just words, not just stories, but proof. Still, the nights didn't get easier. The footsteps outside my cabin kept me awake. The cars idling down the road made me grip the baseball bat by my bed tighter. And the fear that Karen might do something desperate, it lingered like smoke. Finally, the night before the vote arrived. I sat on the porch, staring at the stars, listening to the silence. My mind spun with everything that had happened, the strangers, the arrest, the whispers, the lies. And tomorrow, it would all come down to one thing. One vote. I closed my eyes and asked myself, what if the truth wasn't enough? What if the community chose fear over facts, comfort over courage? Would I still be standing after tomorrow, or would Karen win it all back? What do you think, neighbors, if you had video proof that could destroy the lies of a powerful HOA president? Would you risk showing it and making them your biggest enemy, or keep quiet and protect yourself? Let me know down below. The day of the vote arrived, and the air felt heavier than ever. It wasn't just another HOA meeting. It felt like a trial, like the entire neighborhood was the jury, and Karen and I were both on the stand. The community hall was packed. Every chair taken, people standing along the walls, even more crowding the doorway. The air buzzed with whispers, nervous laughter, and the tension of people waiting for a fight. At the front, Karen stood tall in her bright red jacket. Her smile stretched wide, but her eyes burned like fire. She looked at me as I walked in, and her smirk said everything. She still thought she could win. The board members banged the gavel, calling the meeting to order. Karen stepped up first, voice confident, rehearsed. "My friends, my neighbors. I know there has been confusion these past weeks. I know lies have been spread about me. But I want you to remember one thing, I have always worked for this community. Everything I do is for you. The so-called cabin disaster? That was nothing but a misunderstanding. A gathering meant to bring us together, twisted into something ugly." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some nodded, some frowned, but no one looked away. She was pulling them in. She always had that gift. Then she pointed at me. "But this man, he doesn't want unity. He wants power. He called the police not to protect anyone, but to humiliate me. He wants this HOA under his control. Ask yourselves, is that the kind of leader we need?" Applause broke out. Not from everyone, but from enough to sting. For a moment, doubt crept into me. Maybe she would win. Maybe her lies were stronger than my truth. But then the gavel struck again. It was my turn. I walked to the front, my legs heavy but my voice steady. I looked at the crowd, my neighbors, my so-called community, and I spoke. Karen is right about one thing. This is about leadership. But not about power. About truth. I told them everything. The morning of the cars, the strangers flooding in, the music blasting, the chaos inside my cabin. I told them how she stood there, smiling, claiming it was for community spirit while 300 people trespassed on my private property. I told them how the police saw it for what it was and put her in handcuffs. Some nodded. Some still looked doubtful. I could feel Karen's smirk growing again. So I pulled out my phone. And I said, "But don't just take my word for it. Watch this." I pressed play, and Tom's nephew's video lit up the screen. The hall fell silent. There it was, clear as day, cars arriving, strangers unloading, Karen standing on my porch declaring, "This is for the community." Her voice, her words, her actions, undeniable. Gasps filled the room. Karen's smile cracked, her face pale, her eyes darting around like a cornered animal. Whispers spread like wildfire. She really did it. She lied to us. I can't believe it. For the first time, the power shifted. It wasn't me against Karen anymore. It was the truth against her lies. The board members called for silence. Then one of them spoke. "We've seen enough. This board will now decide." Karen tried to interrupt, shouting, waving her arms, claiming the video was fake, edited, anything to save herself. But no one was listening anymore. The same people who had clapped for her minutes earlier now sat stone-faced, their eyes filled with disappointment, even anger. The board huddled, whispered, and then announced their decision. Effective immediately, Karen is removed from her position as HOA president. A special election will be held to appoint new leadership. This meeting is adjourned. The hall erupted, not with cheers, not with applause, but with a low hum of shock. Some people left quickly, shaking their heads. Others stayed, whispering to one another, glancing at me with new eyes. Some thankful. Some still unsure. Karen stood frozen. Her face twisted with rage, her fists clenched at her sides. She looked at me one last time, her lips curling into a promise, not a surrender. "This isn't over," she hissed. Then she stormed out, the crowd parting around her like she was poison. I stood there, breathing hard, the weight of weeks lifting off me. For the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I had won. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. Because with someone like Karen, I knew she'd never really stop. People like her don't disappear. They wait. They plot. They come back stronger. I walked out of the hall into the cool night air, the stars shining above the mountains. The fight was over, for now. But the battle scars would last. And deep down, I wondered, was justice really served? Or had I just painted a bigger target on my back? So tell me, neighbors, if your HOA president was finally exposed and removed after years of lies and bullying, would you feel safe at last, or would you still sleep with one eye open, waiting for their revenge? I'd love to hear your thoughts below.